Hello. I don't have a start. So, I was thinking a lot today. I changed my work schedule slightly to, on Mondays. I start at the same time, but I'm doing less appointments. So, I still leave my home, same time, still get to work, same time. But I don't start doing any appointments until 4 hours after I arrive. And this is only one day, and I haven't even done that full 4 hours. I'm about 2.5 hours into that time frame. But the reason for that is a couple reasons. One, Monday being the official start of my week. After Saturdays and Sundays, I don't. Saturdays, they're never a work day for me. A very, very rare situation I'll have to do something. And it's generally not by desired choice. And then Sundays have gotten more and more set aside for other commitments and home life. So, Fridays, when I get done for the day, I'm not back on till Monday, which is normal for a lot of people. But running a private practice and having people that I see clinically, I don't think that's always very easy for people to do. And I'm a pretty offline person when I can, so I'm definitely the type of person that turns my phone off at times and puts it away, and I'm very difficult to get a hold of in certain scenarios. And so really disconnecting and unplugging from things is something I like to do, and I think it's important. So coming back in on Mondays, depending on where the last week left off, there's a decent chance that there's going to be more emails or more things that need done, or if I didn't feel like I accomplished everything last week, there might be some carryover, or just stuff that's been swirling in my head over the weekend, like, oh, I need to send this email, I need to do this thing or that thing or that thing. And I've just wanted to have more time on Mondays to start the day not rushed. So I spend 10 hours at the office on Mondays. So only 6 of those now will be doing appointments, and it's possible I have an opening today that's probably not going to be filled. That maybe, and so it's a maximum of 6 appointments and 4 hours of just whatever time. That can be administrative. It can be whatever. Today I was cleaning and doing some emails, tidying up. I try to. The 2 days a week that I'm in office, I try to start my morning by just tidying stuff up around the place. So restocking a lot of, bathroom stuff or snacks or ice trays, and doing dishes that are left out from people and stuff like that, and just doing slow things at work. I do believe that environment is very important to work and productivity, and I do think it sends a message to people that you're with. Being a practice, there's lots of people coming in from the outside, and trying to do the best we can to create a space that's inviting, I think, is really important. So doing some tidying up, cleaning that I do every Monday, and being able to do that in a way that doesn't feel rushed, or doesn't feel, if someone's here and has a question for me, I'm not gonna stress about it's cutting into the limited time I have this morning. And so far this morning, that has been great. Yeah, it's the best way I can say. I had a good morning as well before coming into work, which helps. But being able to move slow, and I'll be out of town next week, and that always means that the week before and the week after are fuller, more going on. I have to prep stuff to leave, and then usually I have to catch up on things getting back. So doubling up on a couple things this week was part of that. having more time to record these and not feel in any way rushed to move along and go quicker. And I think that's good. And I think I'll see that effect a lot more after multiples of these, because I do feel like I have more to do than I want to have to do today. And when I get back from my vacation 2 Mondays from now, I'll be like driving right into the office, so that I'm gonna have to work hard to not feel flustered that day, just because of how things lined up. I'll probably get here with less than an hour from arrival to starting appointments, and that'll be catching up on, for me, about 11 days worth of stuff. When I take a week off with how my appointments are structured, it's usually about 11 days. So that's going to be interesting. But then after that, it'll feel a little bit more normal, falling into place the way I want. But also just learning that I don't want to do as many appointments as I've done in the past. And this is kind of all connected to what was really on my mind today, which is about doing less better. There's a comma between those last two words. Just doing less things, but not necessarily having more free time. Just doing the things that you're already doing better, which for me does include dropping some things. I wouldn't say like a high standard of perfection or excellence on things, but I have a general belief that anything I do should be done well. And I do feel like for the past year and a half or so, maybe a little bit longer, I just have not been hitting that mark for myself. And I can point to, I think, some of the reasons why. I think certain things were added to my life that before I wouldn't have said they were really like adding a lot of effort, but on reflection they were. And now to me it is backing away from certain responsibilities or commitments, so not breaking them off during, but getting to a point where I can hand them off and move on. And I think it's a really healthy thing for people to do things well, and I think there's a lot of mental health benefit to doing a job well, completing a job well done, and to not feeling like you've just rushed it. And it's okay to get things done at times. Everyone who's gone to school has probably turned something in very last minute, or was down to the wire working on something and they just barely got it done. But I think a lot of the times we don't really feel proud of those projects necessarily, unless we're the type of person that we're just going to keep refining until the last minute and it was technically good days ago, but we want to keep. So that might be an exception, but things that we do with intention and do well. There's I don't know if it's a quote fully, I guess it kind of is, but just giving yourself enough space. Oh my gosh, hang on. I'm pretty sure I heard it from Alex Hormozy, the business guy. But he talks about setting aside so much time to do a project that it's unrealistic for you to not get it done. And I think that's a really good standard. Everyone's going to have to wrestle with their whole thing of like, well, I don't have enough time for this. Most people have more time than they think. Some people, they're absolutely right. There's no room for the extra thing or this thing. And, you know, if you're a single parent doing 2 jobs and there's just not room for certain things, for sure. But most of us waste a lot of time in our day, and a really good assessment of that is to just ask yourself, how much time do you waste? And what I like about that question is to just ask it like that, because it's not me telling you what wasting time is. So if I ask you, how much time you spend wasting time a day? You might like maybe an hour or 2. So what you're doing is you're making a conclusion on what wasting time is. I didn't say how much time are you spending doing this thing or this thing or this thing, because they're wastes of time. That's just our own self-assessment of what a waste of time is. And then usually when we break that down even more, we're wasting more than we guessed, usually. when I've done that self-assessment, when I've done it with other people and asked them to reflect on it, a lot of the times they're not counting taking a break at work and going to the bathroom and taking their phone with them and sitting on the toilet for 5 minutes. That's wasting time. That's not being productive. You're not doing your job. Or, taking 5 minutes longer for your lunch break or your regular break, or, you're checking texts while working. Those are not working when you're doing those things. So some people will say, I worked 8 hours today and I don't know why I didn't get stuff done. And it might be true that they only worked 7, honestly. We don't really realize how much we're expending time. So what I'm getting with this is talking about doing things with excellence and improving our ability to do things well. A lot of us can find typically an hour to 2 hours, I feel, is a really safe and probably conservative estimate for how much time we could find back in our day, the average person. And that's not to say, I'm not saying cutting into rest time. That's a whole different conversation where someone's like, I'm taking 30 minutes after work and I'm watching TV to decompress. Again, I'm not telling you you're wasting time doing that. I guess I kind of told you were if you're doing things at work that you're not supposed to. That's a different conversation, I guess. But so there is a line between resting and taking a break and just wasting time. And I think we can usually feel it when we're doing one or the other. Even me scrolling on my phone for 3 minutes. Sometimes it just feels like a transitional activity. Other times, I can start to tell when it's a waste of time. It's pretty rare that 10 minutes on social media, past that line, I'm not immediately thinking I'm wasting time. It is so rare that anything over 10 minutes is useful time for me. And that's really pushing it. 5 minutes is usually when it stops being useful in any way for me. For direct social media, YouTube is a little bit different. Again, subjectivity to all of it. But point being, I think there's a huge and arguably exclusively beneficial experience to doing things well, as opposed to doing more things. And I think anyone who is a therapist has maybe an ethical obligation to practice that. Because, as an example I give my clients and I give other therapists I talk to, I can add more people to my caseload. I have time to do that. I could stop recording videos. I could stop cleaning, or maybe just do a quick tidy, or try to get someone else to do it. I could, work an extra day. So I'm working 6 days a week. I could add, in theory, so many more hours, triple probably. The issue is, how well am I doing the work when I add those hours? If I come into my appointment today, my first appointment of the day, and I'm just not present, I'm exhausted, my mind's everywhere, I'm stressed, there's an ethical argument that I'm doing a disservice to the person that I'm seeing. And there's a good chance that they might not want me in that state that day. But they might not say anything, because maybe, lesser me is better than no me, and people can make that decision themselves. But what if I have 6 appointments back to back today? I'm already stressed and overworked when I come in. Or let's just 10 appointments back to back. And by the time I get to appointment 10, all I want to do is go home. I can barely focus on them. I'm distracted the whole time. I'm intentionally out to get them late, and I end the session a little bit early. And always cutting corners, just not thinking and trying to do circular questions that aren't in any way beneficial. They're just slowing down time. Maybe that's stealing in some way. I'm just getting through the hour. And that hour consists of people's health and well-being. And every job that's going to be different. If I came into a surgery and the surgeon made a joke I only got 6 hours sleep last night, I would probably cancel the surgery and ask for a complete refund for that, because we have data that shows that they're more likely to kill me. That's documented. We know that. I want someone who's going to do a good job. And part of doing a good job is preparing your regular life to do well. This is also why I think if my personal life is in complete disarray, it's going to affect my work. I don't know anyone who fully separates that. I know people who can compartmentalize really well. But if you're exhausted from your personal life, even if you can leave that at home, you're not magically not exhausted when you get to work. So even if you can mentally separate, but you're tired at everything you're doing at work, and for a lot of people, they might even say work is the place I get to rest right now. It's like, okay, that's not even necessarily healthy because you're not supposed to rest at work. It's supposed to be engaging and challenging. It might be joyful and even relaxing to an extent, but it's supposed to be engaging, not necessarily a restful thing. And if you find work restful, that's not the issue I'm trying to get to. But I shouldn't be coming in here drained, bored of my clients, stressed out. Can't even focus on appointment 1 because I'm only thinking about how am I going to get through 9 more today. That's not useful to anyone. But the hard part is I might still do decent work, but it's not going to be challenging work. So another thing that I do a lot of in my life is music, and spend a lot of time rehearsing and playing. And I know the more I rehearse for a set, the more prepared I will be. There is a point of diminishing returns on that and for me that happens where I've prepared for the set enough and any more preparation I'm doing is more just refining technique and skill versus things specific to that set. But if I don't prep at all, I am still typically the type of player that I can go in and it'll sound fine. I can make it sound fine. But I'm probably robbing myself of a good challenge and anyone who's listening, including bandmates. I would argue that they're being robbed of what could have been a better experience. If I'd been like, I'm going to actually, instead of playing a chord here, I'm going to play the melody here. Or instead of playing this note, I'm going to play that same note 3 octaves up or 2 octaves up and mess around with the scale down there for this part of the song because it's a quieter song with more relaxed play. And then maybe I'll work my way back up to a lower octave and pull the song in that way with it. And there's more style there, and there's nothing wrong with doing it differently. But that preparation allows me to hopefully show up with more excellence, more preparedness, more readiness, more ability to respond well to a surprise or something unexpected than not. And I think the same is true for this work, whether I'm studying the cases that I work with, whether I'm getting good enough sleep, eating well, taking care of my body, practicing what I preach. That's a big one for mental health clinicians. The amount of therapists that I see that I just would not be interested in being friends with because I don't think they're relationally mature is to me crazy, because that's so much of the work that we do, or how volatile so many people in this field are is wild to me, where it's totally incongruent with what we're taught to help people with. And that is hard. Empathy is a big part of therapy. Relational health is a big part of therapy. Doing well with boundary setting in a respectful way, not an aggressive and rude way. Sitting with emotions, working through them. All these things that are hard that a lot of therapists don't do themselves, but they tell other people to do it. It's just kind of wild to me. And to me, that's showing up not well. It's not showing up well for the people you work with. And to me, that doing less better, setting a goal for doing something with excellence, not perfection, but being able to show up and be like, even if this doesn't go well, I know I prepared well. I know I did my due diligence, and I can tell you right now, like 10 things that I feel like I'm lacking in. I mentioned earlier, I feel like a year and a half of that not going as well as I would like, below my standard, and I feel that. There's like a healthy level of pride I have in like really doing a good job with what I have, and it is different from perfectionism. And that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to do less right now. So I can reallocate time to fewer things to be done well and to have proper energy put in to them. And this is for every area of my life. It's not just work. It's not just music. It's relationships I have with people. I don't want to show up so tired that all I want to do is leave for friends or for family. I want to show up and do that thing well also. Just be a good person to the people around me. And at the end of the day, it's an encouragement to just not overdo things, not overwork yourself, especially for people who are very agreeable, where it's really easy to say yes, and they want to be present, and they want to take care of things, and they want to help. Yeah, you can just burn out, and you'll probably burn out slower because you probably have a higher capacity. Some of this is also recognizing your capacity to do things. It's why someone can do an 80-hour week just fine at their job, and another person might be really about to break down after 30 hours. Sometimes it's a difference in jobs. Therapy is a good example. Anytime I've talked to a therapist that's done 30 appointments in a week, it's usually there's some other thing that is happening, whether it's a financial goal, an hours goal, their work is doing something, pandemic stuff, they're putting in a lot of hours. That's not a sustainable amount for most therapists. 30 hours. That's crazy. I've met plenty that are burnt out at 20 appointments a week. So it's really normal for people to be in that 12 to 20 range. Whereas I've met programmers and coders who, they have to be pulled away from their screen because they could do 12 to 16 hours a day and they love it. And it's life-giving and engaging, and it's not draining the same way. A lot of therapists will say it's life-giving, but it drains you differently because you're working with people. And those are just such different things. And then personality makes a difference in there as well. And pressures of external life. If you're a single person and you're a little, you're maybe more introverted and not super social, and you're going to have a lot more energy for certain things versus someone who's got a spouse and like 6 kids at home, and they just run out of energy, and it's hard to do a job maybe like mine. They got all that going on at home and then come to work and have to talk about problems. And they might need less hours, or potentially just a more focused clientele. That's true as well. So I think it's worth for everyone to reflect on what they're not doing well in their life. And I feel like I've met very few people that are doing everything well. But I think it's possible for most people. I know some people might say, it's just life, you get done what you can, and I think that's a cop-out for a lot of people. I think it's an excuse to not do things well. But I usually think that's because we're flooded with so much stuff that we don't need to be doing. So that's not me saying people are lazy. It's me saying people stack so much on their agenda that it is not possible to do those things well. It is only possible to get by. So for a lot of people, it would be, stop watching as much TV as you're doing. Stop spending time with 5 different friend groups in a week for certain people. Stop doing this task so much, this task. Stop staying late for a job that doesn't pay you overtime. Just do things well. And that's another issue as well. If you're doing things way too well in one area, past the point of expectation, and that is now neglecting other areas of your life, that's not really that healthy either. Workaholics with families are great examples of that. You might be getting promoted left and right, and your boss is like, this best employee I've ever had, you exceed all expectations, and you're just plowing through. You're missing every important day from your spouse, all your kids' important days. You're fine working holidays, you answer your phone on vacation, on weekends, like that. That's unhealthy for the most part. And so excellence also means knowing when to stop something. The outside world doesn't see that as much. This is why you see so many, let's say you hear a decent amount of stories of people who really excelled in their field and just had really bad personal lives. And some people might say they're okay with that trade-off. I think the issue is probably don't get married and have kids then if you don't have any intention of being around them. And a lot of people say, well, I'm providing for them financially. And bear in mind, I'm talking about people making a lot of money, not people who are like, I have to work 12 hours every day to pay bills. Not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who could afford to stop working as much as they are, to be more present with their family in other ways, emotionally, mentally, physically present, not just financially present. Again, those are people who can afford that. So excellence has a cost, and doing things well has a cost. And this is why I think the framing that can be really helpful is doing less better. So the cost of me doing, therapy better might be doing less therapy. The therapy that I am doing it better. To be able to do music better might for me mean a lot less social media time. That's one of the big ones that I need to do less of right now. Kind of goes through phases, and it is too high right now. If I could reallocate all of my social media time, or even 90% of it, to rehearsal and practice, I'm pretty confident I would see a noticeable spike in my ability to be prepared in that area. So sometimes it's just a trade. It doesn't have to be finding more time. It just means I want to do this well. Is there something I don't care that much about? Or is there something that I'm doing that I'm not being asked to do? And I think the tricky part with these things is it's not necessarily good to back out of commitments, because that is then not doing that thing well either. So some things, I'm doing something right now with supervising students with my work. I'm going to do less of that. And by September, I'm going to be doing none of it. I love doing it, and it's really helpful for me to develop, and I have hoped that it's helpful for the students that I work with. But it doesn't make sense, all things considered, to keep doing that. And I can apply all that time, just about 3, maybe 4 hours a week of my time right now. So not an enormous amount of time. But my intention is to reapply all that time to work-related tasks. So I'm intentionally dropping certain work to move it to other work, to do that work well. I could take more free time at home instead, but this is something I want to trade work for work. So I'm not going to work less hours. I'm just not going to do that thing anymore, and I'm going to reapply that time to things that I am doing to do them better. Just to do them better, despite really liking that thing. But for me, that was like a 4-5 month process of I've committed to doing this, and I'm going to finish out the commitments. And I'm going to back out of them as much as I reasonably can with permission of everyone else involved, and then end at a time that makes sense with everyone else involved. And so, yeah, I definitely don't always encourage people just to stop doing stuff. And again, to ignore responsibilities. That's kind of counterintuitive. Because then by definition, you're not doing the thing well anymore. Yeah. I think it can also help with how we focus and spend our time intentionally. So if we create more time to do things well, we can also create more time to do it with potential delay and disruption. So for instance, if I give myself an hour to record this video, which it will not go an hour, also in part because I didn't delete old videos, so I only actually have 45 minutes of video space. But if I needed to go longer, I was really feeling something, I have actual time at the end. I only have about 17 minutes of actual recording space left, but I don't have to be anywhere for another 70 minutes. So I have time. And when this ends, I have a list of things I'd like to start getting to. And I'm just not as stressed about getting them done because I want to give myself a lot of time to do them well and to not do them rushed, like I said at the start of this. Like in 2 Mondays from now, I'm still trying to figure out exactly when I need to come in because I don't want to start the day hectic. I want to start it smooth and give myself enough time to catch up on things that I might have missed while I was gone. Because that's important to me. And that, to me, is also how I do things well, which might be different for other people, but doing things at a healthy pace and doing things in a way that I don't feel rushed, that reduces my stress a ton. And one effect of my stress being reduced, I'm more present and I do things better and more thoughtfully, and I'm more relaxed. That's a net positive to just give myself more time for certain tasks. And this, I think, is an art as well. We don't always know how long things are going to take. And so overestimating is helpful. And then there's just going to be weeks that a lot of stuff needs done. And you're not going to get as much rest time as you wanted, and you're not going to have as much time for each task as you wanted. I think the idea is that, can you set yourself up where people have an expectation that you're just going to blow stuff out of the water and that they're going to be impressed by you? And then when it doesn't happen, they're like, oh, that's a bummer. As opposed to when it does happen, they go, whoa, look at you this week. And so when you have those lulls, they're exceptions to the rule. They're not proving a continued story about how you're just not very good at getting stuff done on time or well. And again, I can think of multiple things right now that I'm kind of grossed out on that I'm not doing super well. And I think some of them other people would notice too. They'd be like, you gotta step it up a bit. And I think other things other people would say, you're doing it fantastically well, but I know my actual ability to do that is way above what I'm actually offering. And that ability isn't pushing myself to an extreme, it's just trying a little bit harder. And most people have that. They have something that they can do really well with very little effort. And a lot of people have things that take a lot of effort to barely make a dent. And that's good when we can have other people do that, if at all possible, or help us. So, oftentimes we're the ones who know best what our capacity and limitations are. So, this is an encouragement for myself, and of course anyone who's listening, but really a reminder for me as I go through my week and my life to just set myself up for success for the benefit of myself and other people, to move the entirety of the world forward in a really good way. And for me to do that, I need to be doing the things that I'm given well. I need to manage and steward what I'm given well and efficiently and with excellence. And part of that comes by saying no to certain new things and backing out of certain old things to make room for things that I'm currently responsible for to be done very, very well. And I think it's important. So that's on my mind today. And I'll leave it there.